the team that wins this game will probably go on to win the World Cup. So
You're watching Sri Lanka's number one sports hub, www.thepapare.com. Welcome to another episode of Black Knight Rugby World Cup Special 2023. And joining us to chat about this incredible tournament is Shanaka Amarasinghe. Shanaka, welcome back.
thank you very much.
Well, we've come to the business end of the tournament. The knockout phase is going to happen this weekend, and it's going to be an interesting one. Shanaka, last week, of course, not many upsets, but two games that really stood out. The one was the virtual playoff for the quarterfinal, Japan taking on Argentina. And just before we started the show as well, like you mentioned, Japan missing out two tackle, missing out on a historical opportunity to try and feature in a quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think they would have been really happy with being able to be in their second successive quarterfinal as well. Sudarshan, they were first time in their home country in 2019 that they managed to get into that quarterfinal, and they would have been doing really well if they managed to do it two successive times in a group that featured England and Argentina. And it was a virtual round of 16 playoff for them. And unfortunately, Ryoto Nakamura, the Japanese number 12, usually so solid, missed an early tackle on Santiago Chacobares, and then a later tackle on Carreras, and those were the two tries that really took the game away from Japan. So they really competed well. I thought they were the team that played the best rugby in that entire group. They were the most consistent, and they had a lot of luck going against them, unfortunately, and well, that's it for them. So unfortunately, Michael Leach has to go home in the group stages. But what a servant he has been, not just for Japanese rugby, but such an inspiration for Asian rugby players in general as well. And this Japan team, I think all of us in Sri Lanka should be mourning their departure, because they are our only representation and inspiration as well.
Well, absolutely. Japan has done wonders when it comes to the international rugby stage, being an Asian country, and also especially given the fact that they largely have home-based players. They do not have, if you'd say, imports in their mix as well. The second game, of course, that really piqued the interest of many people was the Fiji versus Portugal game. What a game that was, Shanaka. Fijians doing what Fijians do, making things very difficult for themselves, making sure they get that qualification with a losing bonus point. But kudos to Portugal for winning their first Rugby World Cup game, and what a testament to that team. They played their first World Cup since 2007, and here they inspired the entire nation and inspired many.
Oh, they've been fantastic, haven't they? They really have been outstanding. They haven't won a football World Cup yet, and they probably might win a Rugby World Cup before they win the football World Cup, the way they have been playing. But I thought Portugal, Japan, and Uruguay were the teams for me that were the most fun to watch in this entire tournament. Take away the All Blacks, take away France, take away everybody. But in terms of the quality of rugby and the intensity of rugby and the positivity of rugby that they've tried to play, these three teams for me have been outstanding, and Portugal was no different in their final game against Fiji. And the thing about Fiji is, like, we have this islander mentality, Sudarshan. I think it's something that we see across industries, not just in sports, that we tend to do the bare minimum to get by. And that's what Fiji did on the day. They knew they only needed a losing bonus point, and that's what they got. They knew they needed to beat Wales. They tried very hard to beat them. They knew they needed to beat Australia. They managed to do that. But when they knew that all they needed was just 1 point, they were like, you know what? If we get the point, that's enough for us.
Well, we really do hope that this victory will inspire a nation when it comes to Portugal, because seeing some of the videos of how these Portuguese players were welcome back to their country, it's safe to say rugby in Portugal is growing, and rugby in Portugal, despite being one of those teams that barely made it to the World Cup, Shanaka, they absolutely impressed in that group.
Yeah, they really did. And I think we can expect a little bit more from them. They beat the likes of the USA to get here. And I think we can't look at them as just a smaller nation anymore. I think they've set their flag out. And the teams like Portugal and Georgia should really be given the opportunity to be able to get into the Six Nations, to have some sort of relegation and promotion situation there, where at least one team manages to play in the Six Nations, because given the evidence of this tournament, Italy certainly don't deserve to be there, but Portugal and Georgia do.
Well, absolutely. And there's another game before we go into the all important, the exciting quarterfinals that are lined up. One game that was interesting was the Samoa versus England game. Very close game. Samoans, of course, with some of the players who crossed over to play for their origin country, if you may say so, were ever so close in beating England, despite being an error-ridden game. But more concern will be on how English performed in that game, Shanika. They didn't look like they had the continuity or the momentum to go forward.
Well, I think the answer is simple there, Sudarshan. I think it's very obvious that England play better when Owen Farrell is not in the team.
Yeah.
And that's something that English fans need to take notice of. I think the England coaching staff obviously know that. And now that he's finally surpassed Johnny Wilkinson's record in many more games, and that's what they wanted him to do, and now they can perhaps go back to picking their best team.
Yes, what we'll do is we'll take a quick commercial break, and on the other side we will chat about the interesting quarterfinals that are lined up. Welcome back to the action and the chat, brought to you by Black Knight. Black Knight Rugby World Cup Special. Black Knight, of course, is a brand that encapsulates main grooming from head to toe, and are partnering us in bringing you this Rugby World Cup coverage. Now, Shanika, chatting about the business end of the tournament. 4 quarterfinals, very interesting ones at that. First quarterfinal will be played at 8:30 p.m. on 14th of October, that's Saturday. Wales taking on Argentina. 2 teams. It'll be difficult to pick a winner in this game, Shanika, because both teams haven't really impressed in their first rounds.
Yeah, and we've not really talked about Wales since their win against Fiji, really, and they managed to smash Australia off the park. That'll give them a lot of confidence, but that's more to do with Australia being terrible than Wales being absolutely fantastic. And even in that first 20 minutes, I think the way Australia took the game to them, Michael Chika will take a lot of notes from that, and he would have made sure that he knows exactly what to do against his Wales team. Wales have been impressed with Jack Morgan. I think he has been outstanding as captain and as flanker. He's been doing a lot of good work there, but they've been solid. They've been unspectacular, but solid. Josh Adams is scoring tries. George North is doing the business at number 13. And actually, when Dan Biggar came off and Gareth Anscombe came on in that final game that they played, I thought again they played quite a bit better. So it'll be interesting to see how Warren Gatland will go with that combination. And that's something that I think we will find out maybe later tonight or tomorrow. That's Friday. That's when we'll find out what the teams are that are going to be lining up. So it'll depend a lot on which Wales comes out tomorrow. But it'll even depend a lot more on which Argentina comes out tomorrow. So the Argentina team that played against Japan, with Chocobar is just playing with that really strong, carry the ball to the line kind of game. And with the wingers running onto the ball really hard, they look good. They look like the kind of Argentina that has recorded victories over Australia and New Zealand recently, but certainly not the Argentina that started the tournament. So perhaps they're peaking at the right time.
Well, it's going to be very interesting. Shanika, to put you on the spot, who do you think will win, and by how much?
I think Argentina are probably going to pull this one off. I would really like it if that were the case. Not sure what Pablo Matera's hamstring injury situation looks like, because he came off in that game against Japan, and they would love to have him back for a game like this. But I think it's probably going to be close, because it's a high-pressure game, and it's probably going to come down to the kicking of Emiliano Boffelli, and I'll probably say Argentina by about 6.
Yes, Argentina by 6 sounds about right, especially given the fact that when it comes to the forwards, they will be evenly matched, with the Welsh really putting in a big shift there. So the backs of the Argentinians might be the difference when it comes to the two teams. Now, moving on to the second quarter final, which will pique the interest of a lot of Sri Lankans who are massive fans of the All Blacks. Will be played at 12:30 a.m. 15. That's Friday night, early morning, Saturday. All Blacks taking on.
Actually, it's Saturday night, early morning,
Beg
Sunday.
your pardon. Yes, Saturday night, early morning, Sunday. A lot of people will be staying up for that one. All Blacks taking on the Irish, the number one ranked team, and also the team that has impressed many throughout this tournament. Shanaka's prediction last week as one team that may go the distance. Shanaka, a game worthy of a final or a semi-final, if you ask me, will be a quarter-final. Very interesting game, but Irish will be a little concerned of the fact that they have some injuries to players, which will test their bench strength and also test their depth when it comes to the squad.
Yeah, 1 week is a long time in rugby, Sudarshana, and what I said about Ireland going the distance, I might have to revise now 7 days later because there's no James Ryan, there's no Keith Earls, and there is no Robbie Henshaw for Ireland, for Andy Farrell to pick. And that means you're losing such a huge number of caps, a couple of hundred caps you're losing in that. In those three bench players, which means that Ireland have to go the distance with their first 15. They need to play maybe 55, 60 minutes of that game. And the problem with them doing that is that most of this Ireland first 15 have already played a huge number of minutes. They're the team with their first 15 players having played the most number of minutes in the entire competition. I think they've got an average of about 240 minutes that the entire team has played. So that's going to be an issue coming in. But having said that, Sudarshana, we are sitting here and looking at that, but obviously it's something guys like Andy Farrell would have planned for. So he would have known coming to this spot, this is the amount of minutes that my team has played for, and that's okay. We are going to be prepared for that. The players know that that's going to be the case, and they will know what they've got left in the tank as well. So it all depends on how the backroom staff have been working, how the massiers and the physios and the SNC coaches, how they have been working behind the scenes, because considering how much rugby that they've played, it looks very much like Ireland are still a very fit team. James Lowe has recovered, Mac Hansen has recovered. So I don't think they are too upset. They've also named their team very early. They didn't need to name that too early, but they have done so, which shows that they're confident and playing on the front foot. So they've said, this is what we're going to throw against you, New Zealand. Come at us with whatever you've got. And it's going to be interesting to see how New Zealand respond to this as well, because I don't see New Zealand being able to beat this Ireland team without playing chaos rugby. I think they need to play that Super Rugby style kind of rugby that really stretches Ireland from side to side on the field. And they're not going to win by kicking to Ireland, because that back three is fantastic. They're going to run everything back at you. But I really don't think they have an option but to play that real All Blacks style free-flowing rugby, and they need to make some personnel changes to do that. Will they do that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, now, very interesting fact that you brought up, the fact that New Zealand needs to play that chaos rugby. They need to play that free-flowing rugby. But throughout this tournament, and also in the latter part of the Rugby Championship, something that we noticed is that New Zealand are hell-bent. Ian Foster is hell-bent on playing the double pivot. But playing the double pivot, it doesn't look like Richie Mo'unga is able to do what he can do consistently, because he's looking over his shoulder, wondering whether he'll be getting the ball or not. So how do you think All Blacks will manage that? Because like you said, structured play, Ireland are masters at it. They will control the breakdown. They will make sure that they control it. But in order to play that fast-paced ball game, you need to have the talismanic number 10 who will make sure that you get front foot ball.
Yeah, absolutely, Sudarshan. And this is something I've been saying for maybe the last 2 seasons, that Richie Mo'unga is not able to come into his own as long as Beauden Barrett is on that team. And what troubles me is not so much the double pivot. I get that. I get having two playmakers in a team. But what they're doing is not having two playmakers on either side of the ruck. They're having the two playmakers even when the play is on one touchline or the other. So you've got Barrett either catching the ball and handing off to Mo'unga, or Mo'unga catching the ball and handing it off to Barrett, which makes absolutely no sense to me. So that's something that they have to think about. And when I said personnel changes, I think Damien McKenzie needs to either start or be a preferred player coming off the bench. I think Will Jordan needs to go into number 15 because that's where he'll get more of the ball. It's where he plays his best rugby. But it's unlikely.
Who will you have who will you have in the wing instead of Jordan?
I'll have Mark Tilea on one wing for
If
sure.
he's fit.
Seems like he might be fit. And I'd move Rico Ioane where he always should have played, which is number 11. And bring Anton Leonard-Brown in at number 13 because he's played there. He knows the position inside out. And he's excellent at that position.
So ALB and Geordie in the midfield?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's going to be a very interesting call, and I do agree with you, Rico Ioane, with his speed and also not having the knack to pass very often. He's much better in that number 11 jersey. So two Blues wingers in that team. According to Shanaka, you would prefer that?
I would prefer that, but it's not going to happen, let's face it.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to New Zealand, Sam Cane not being able to play that quarterfinal might come in as a blessing in disguise for New Zealand because since he's the captain and since he's part of the leadership group, like Owen Farrell, there is this is something New Zealand wasn't known for earlier, but has changed in the past couple of years. He gets an automatic qualification, but Sam Cane wasn't the top pick even amongst the current pool.
Yeah, absolutely, Sudarshan. He doesn't make my 23 if I was selecting the side. So that's an issue for them. They actually chose to pull him out really late in that first pool game against France as well. And when we asked him what the issue was, they said it was a back spasm. Now, a back spasm is not a huge problem. If you're playing the most important group game against your number one ranked team in the world, your captain is going to play through a back spasm. So it seems to be that the All Black selection hierarchy is kind of letting Sam Cane down easy and saying, oh, he's injured, oh, he's this, oh, he's that, without actually coming out and saying, look, he's not good enough to start in the number 7 jersey. Because Dalton Papale is one of the leading tacklers of the tournament, despite having played just very few matches. And if they have him in there, if they have Papale in there, if they have Shannon Frizzell in there, and if they have Luke Jacobson in there, they're going to really disrupt that Ireland third row because they're going to be really fast. They're really going to be all over the place. And yes, I know you're looking at me like you're going to drop Adi Savea. And yes, I am.
Yeah. You've always been an advocate of that, but I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe Jacobson will drop to the bench with Savia coming in as number 8 because Savia is the standing captain and they will not go with Savia in the bench. Like you mentioned, you are a strong advocate of Savia being a fringe player and not a starter. But Beauden Barrett ideally should be the number 23. He is maybe world's best number 23, and the impact he makes when he comes in from the bench hasn't been seen when he starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where he made a name for himself on the World Rugby circuit by coming on late in games in that 2015 team and just smoking the opposition because he was running against tired legs and he had amazing acceleration. That was 2015. He's 8 years older now. So he doesn't have that same acceleration through no fault of his own, but he's also been unable to make the adjustment to becoming a different player. Yeah. So he's still very reliant on being able to break through those half gaps, to swerve his hips through those half gaps. And when that's not happening, and when his pace has let him down, he's becoming frustrated. So he hasn't added that extra string to his bow to be able to succeed when he's an older player. He was brilliant when he was young. He was absolutely outstanding. But he hasn't graduated to being able to be a guy who really bosses a game. So that's where I feel the issue is with the All Blacks, that game management. And I think given the responsibility, Richie Mo'unga can do it. But at the moment, he doesn't really have it.
Well, very, very interesting facts surrounding this game. Shanaka, the difficult question. Who do you think will win and by how much?
This is an impossible one to call, Sudarshana, because last week I would have comfortably said Ireland were going to win. Yeah. But with these 3 injuries, if there's a red card, if there is some injury that happens unwittingly on the field, that someone pulls a hamstring, somebody bashes his head on someone else's knee or something like that, then Ireland are staring down the barrel. They have a little bit of a problem. They're trying to be very confident about it, but I think they'll admit to themselves that they don't have the bench to get them through this game if something happens early on. So if they all stay fit, if everyone stays fit, Ireland by 15. But if they don't, it's going to be close.
Well, Ireland by 15 is what Chanukya calls, but I think All Blacks might take this game by 7 points,
Okay.
is what I'm calling. So Chanukya is happy, he's All Black fan.
I'm wearing
He's
my
trying
All
to-
Blacks tie. It's probably the last time I get to wear it this season.
Right. The next game, quarter-final number 3, England taking on Fiji. Last time these two teams met, it was at Twickenham. And Fiji made sure that they were victorious. They will have that confidence in them. England, we both agree that they are the luckiest team to be in that quarterfinal berth. Interesting game, two contrasting ways of playing rugby. English will like to kick the ball and make sure that it has a lot of time in the air. But with Fiji, will they go down that road?
Well, Fiji's back three haven't been devastating, Sudarshana. So I think, yes, they will put some pressure on that Fijian line out and kick to the corners. There's a talk that they will pick Ford over Farrell, and that Farrell might not be in the starting 15. There's talk.
So that's a problem, isn't it? When you say Ford might be picked over Farrell, automatically Farrell gets moved into the midfield, which is pretty much settled.
I think they're talking about not picking him in the 23, in the 15 at all.
Right.
So I think they might start with maybe Tuilangi at 12 and maybe Marchant or someone, Ollie Lawrence outside him. So that's what they might be thinking of doing. And I think they'll need that brawn against the Fijian midfield. I mean, you got Joshua Tuisova, and I don't see... I mean, if I was Joshua Tuisova and you told me the night before the game that Owen Farrell is going to be my opposite number, I'd be licking my lips, right? So perhaps they realize that and would want someone like Tuilangi across from Tuisova to really nullify that threat. So that's probably what they'll be doing. And it'll be interesting if they pick that... big midfield. I think they will have what it takes to roll over Fiji, because George Ford is a very intelligent player. He knows how to bring other people into the game, whereas Owen Farrell is someone who really needs to think that the other 14 are there to kind of help me beat Johnny Wilkinson's record. So I don't like him as a player. But that's what I feel is going to happen. I think it might be a step too far. Fiji has a few problems in the camp. Social media has been quite rife with a few tensions there as well. So I think this might be where their tournament ends.
Yes, it will be very unfortunate if Fiji can't go through to the semi-final, because that will do a world of good to the Pacific Islands. Chanukya, your call. Whole win, you're parting with England, but by how much?
That's going to be a difficult one. Again, it depends on which Fiji turns up. But I would love to see Fiji win this one. I absolutely would love to see Fiji win this one. But my head tells me that England are probably going to win by 10 plus.
10 plus, right. And just before we move into the final one, I'm talking about Farrell. If he's picked in the midfield, they are going in with a lot of... risk of losing a player to a red card, because we all know how he tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially against these big boys, he's going to be in two minds about it anyway. So he's certainly going to lead with that shoulder. And, you never know. It'll be a fitting end to his England career.
Right. So the next one, probably the most exciting quarterfinal of them all. Defending champions taking on the host nation, who are looking like they are well drilled to go all the way this World Cup. France taking on South Africa. That will be at 12:30 a.m. on the 16th. That's Sunday night, early morning Monday. Interesting game, absolutely thrilling game, and that's going to be played at the start as well. Chanukya. exciting quarterfinal.
Oh yeah, it's something that I mean, my blood is. I mean, my hair is standing on end just thinking about it. Sudarshan, it's going to be such an immense game. It's quarterfinal rugby, right? It's knockout rugby. It should have been a final, but it's a quarterfinal
Yep.
instead. And here are injury-riddled South African team who still have the depth, who have the players who've come back into the side, Lucanio Arm and Andre Pollard. They've come back into the side. And against France, who have a returning Antoine Dupont, we don't know exactly how fit he is. We don't know how much contact he's able to take, all that kind of thing, everything at the back of his mind. So it's going to be just one of those games where both teams know, though, if they get through this, one of them will probably win the World Cup. The team that wins this game will probably go on to win the World Cup. So that's something that I think everyone will have in the back of their mind, and Dupont wouldn't care if he can't play the semi or can't play the final if he plays this one and wins it. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, it kind of reaffirms what you said about Sam Cayman and his back spasms. He is a player, Anton Dupont, coming in after having a surgery onto his cheekbone, where a piece of metal was inserted just 2 weeks ago, going to play the quarterfinal, Shanaka. So it's going to be very interesting how France take on South Africa. Again, like to remind you viewers that South Africa might not play under the South African flag, Shanaka, although South Africa Rugby has filed in an appeal challenging World Anti-Doping Society's. This is, by the way, no fault of South Africa Rugby or South Africa Rugby players or the administration. This is the country as a whole. They haven't abided by all the rules that World Anti-Doping has put down on them. So they might have to play under a neutral flag. South African national anthem will not be sung, and they are very passionate about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel for these guys who are going on the park, and I really feel for the players if they're not able to do that at such a great occasion. But it's also heartening to know that a team that is so good, who are defending world champions, all of that kind of thing, also have an administration back home that are as rubbish as ours. Right, so that's something that that is heartening for all Sri Lankan athletes. That despite that, you can go and win global medals if you do your job right. So I think that's something that we can take away from it. But it's an administrative thing. The domestic legislation doesn't match up to the standards that the World Anti-Doping Association has set up. They haven't met the deadline to change the legislation, and as a result of that, that's where the problem is. So it's not an issue of South African players have been doping or anything like that. It's just an administrative issue.
Yes, so we really do hope that this appeal comes through and South Africa can play as South Africa, the defending world champions, can make sure that they rep that rainbow nation and the rainbow flag. Shanaka, difficult one. It's going to be an exciting one. I know you're shaking your head. It's going to be difficult to call who will win and by how much.
Well, there are a few things to consider, Sudarshana, because if Andre Pollard starts and Lucanio Arm starts, that means that Rassie Erasmus doesn't have as much faith in the players that started the tournament.
Yep.
Because if you're bringing these guys into a starting lineup fresh, not having played competitive rugby in a long time, that'll send a signal to the rest of the team, and that might just deflate those South African players just a little bit. So I'm wondering how Rassie is going to handle that particular situation. I really feel for him. He's the coach with the most difficult job in selection in the entire world because of all the agendas that he has to manage and all the tightropes he needs to walk. France don't have that problem. France are a team that have been playing together for a long time. France have their talisman back, and they looked really good even without him against Italy. They've got Jalonche back.
Yeah.
They've got their first choice third row available. And as a result of that, I think France will be my favorites going into this game. And again, I can't say too much without having seen the team sheets. But just on what has transpired in the last week and what's probably going on in both camps, and judging by the little that I can see from the outside of what they've been saying to the media, I feel that France might win this one comfortably.
Yes, also take into account that packed stadium in Paris. They will be loud. You can be absolutely sure of that. And France might just go the distance, but do not write off the defending world champions. They play with a lot of heart. They play for each other, and if some of them can really put their hand up, and like we mentioned last week, they lost one of their most important players when it comes to that line out. But if they can go the distance, South Africa will be difficult to stop.
Yeah, they struggled. Well, not struggled, but they came really close to Ireland with Malcolm Marx. Can they come close to France without Malcolm Marx? That's going to be the real litmus test question.
Well, very, very interesting weekend upon us all. For all rugby lovers of the country, we really do hope that you have cleared your schedules. All the action will be brought to you on the Papare TV, Dialogue TV channel number 126, where you will be able to watch back-to-back exciting, interesting rugby. Shanaka, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Hopefully, we'll be able to chat about the semi-finals, and hopefully, you are right on all your predictions.
Likewise, Sudarshan, let's hope so. Reputation's on the line.
Brilliant. So with that, we come to the end of Black Knight Rugby World Cup special this week. And up until we meet you next time, I'm Sudarshan signing off for the Papare.com.